This is a podcast from Rover.
Hi, I'm Dayna, a former TV presenter and radio host. But to Luca and Darcy, I'm known as... Mommy! Maybe one day they'll realise I used to be cool. Being a mum has been my greatest joy and biggest headache. It's taken me to playgroups and parent gatherings, mainly for cake and coffee, but also to meet parents and swap stories, which reminded me I'm not alone and the things we face are normal. And that's what this podcast, Parents We've Met, is all about.
Yeah, that memory has stayed with me of mum just being like, all right, you little weirdo, you can wear your ice skating suit. And I wore it to dance class and felt amazing.
I don't think we're meant to do this parent gig alone, and I knew I needed a bit of a coach to help me along the way. And that's where Jenny comes in.
Oh, I don't know if I can help you now, Dayna.
Come on, mate.
Every parent has their own story and their own struggles. So join us as we chat through the magic and mess of this parenting gig.
Ka pai, Jenny. Welcome to Parents We've Met. Now, if you wear clothes, this episode is totally for you. This week we got to chat with the wonderful Hale, who is a very talented personal stylist and image consultant. Now, Heather gave really helpful and practical advice for both mums and dads, including the things we should probably be retiring from our wardrobes and how dressing well can be great for our mental health too. Heather is also a mum to a teenage daughter and an 8-year-old son. She shared so honestly about the magic in being a mum and the unexpected hard stuff too, like postnatal depression. I loved this open and honest chat about letting go of ideals and grieving expectations. Now, I've been so looking forward to this chat, gaining some tips, sparking some joy. But being a parenting podcast, we'd love to kick things off first with hearing about who is in your whānau. Can you tell us ages and stages?
I'm Heather Hale and I'm married to Michael Hale, and we've got Heidi Hale, our big 13-year-old girl, and Beaumont Hale, our 8-year-old boy.
And you're married to Jenny's son, which, Jenny, I think is like a gold star to your parenting.
Yeah, I was like, looked at the family, got the credentials, and I was like, this is a family I'm happy to marry into.
Actually, my husband once said to me, I didn't realise how important it was to look at the person's family before you get married. And I'm like, hang on, would you still marry me? Like, what are you saying?
You do, you marry the whole family. But that's a great thing. I often say to friends when they ask about, having Jenny as my mother-in-law and her being a parenting coach, and then there's Stuart who's been a teacher, and they say, oh, is there a lot of pressure in the way you have to raise the kids? And I'm like, we raise them together. We've done so much of this as a big family unit, and I feel very lucky to have done it like that.
I was thinking there's probably some perks having a mother-in-law who's a coach.
Definitely.
I mean, I'm sure she's given you much great advice and ideas over the years, when asked for, of course, I'm sure.
That's it. Well, that's the wonderful thing too, is Jenny always waits for us to ask, and I feel very grateful for that. But she never comes in, just with her ideas and thoughts, which I'm sure she would have liked to at some stage, but always waits for us to ask if we're having trouble with a certain thing. She'll be like, oh yeah, I've got some thoughts on that, and help us along. But Jenny's very gracious at waiting for us to ask.
I feel quite protective about that space, because I look back on how my parents were, or in-laws were to me, and I think that there is a space that parents own, which is working it out themselves, and if they want help, they'll reach out. But to barge on in uninvited often just sets the relationship up for some friction, which can last a long time. So I think it's important to respect the invitation.
Yeah.
Is there one thing that Jenny said that you call on a lot, that you use in your...
Oh, definitely. Like, there are real sound bites from the last 13 years that stay with me. Probably one of my favourites is stay with the age. Heidi's always been vivacious and strong-willed and outgoing and, and happy to sort of argue or get her thoughts across. And I just used to think, oh my gosh, if she's like this at 5, what are we going to be like when she's 15? I'm so stressed about it. And Jenny would say, just stay at the age. She's only 5. You don't know what it'll be like when she's 15, and things will be different next year when she's 6 and when she's 7.
I think there's enough alarm in parenting without having that awful foreboding. If they're tricky at 3, they're going to be dynamite at 13. So, I think we've got to stay with the day we're in, which is really important.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned your daughter's almost 13. I mean, it's such a big stage, you know, with social media and the world and you're changing. How do you help her navigate that, and also with what you do as a stylist?
Yeah, daily. It's a daily thing. But I find the biggest thing is just holding out as long as I can on certain stuff. We had this really hilarious chat the other night because, you know, Instagram and all that is sort of coming up, and she'll go to high school next year. And I guess I've always sort of thought that's when she'll have it. And I sort of said to her the other night, I said, maybe I'm just going to say never. Like when she asked when she could have it. And she was like, what do you mean? And I said, I haven't thought about this the whole way through, but hear me out. My job is to protect you from stuff online and stuff in life in the best way I can. And literally the best way I could do that in my thinking right now in this moment is to just never let you have it until you're 18 and can make that decision for yourself. I haven't really thought it through, but maybe I'm going to lean into this. Maybe this is going to be my call. Maybe this is going to be the greatest thing I can do for you. And it'll be hard in the moment because I'll be the enemy and you'll really want it. But I would run in front of a car for you. So maybe this is me running in front of a car for you. Maybe this is me going, this is going to be really hard to not let you have it and to be the bad guy and to make this really outrageous decision, because who in high school mum doesn't let them have something like that everyone has? And so I haven't fully decided yet, but that might be what I do, is kind of go back to a few extremes, because I feel like Instagram and other online stuff is extreme. Like the negative effects it has on these teenagers is extreme. So maybe I need to be extreme. And so, yeah, this is not a definite plan yet, but this is how I'm feeling at the moment, is like maybe I need to be a bit extreme. So I'll be reading and thinking about that. But Heidi and I, we're so fortunate in that she's very open. So she tells us everything that's going on, delightfully so, you know, all the details. It's great. I have to really be careful how much I get involved, because a lot of it breaks my heart. And, you know, seeing her navigate relationships and get hurt or hurt others is so hard. But I think I've thought for a long time now that as long as she's telling me stuff, it's all I can hope for. And we'll just muddle through together, get help from the experts. But if we're just doing it together because we're always talking about stuff, then hopefully we'll be okay.
Heather, I'd love to know, I might find out some new things in this question, but sharing what your family was like as you grew up.
Yeah, well, I think it was, to start, it was lovely. I have great memories of my childhood, and we're a very close family still now. We have a lot of fun together, and we had a lot of fun as kids. You know, there was a great sense of humour from mum and dad, but there was also a lot of probably over-the-top strictness maybe, which I reflect on quite differently now to then how I felt at the time. You know, like as a teenager and dad not letting us go out to certain things, it was just struggle street for me as a teen. But now I look back and I'm like, oh gosh, dad was just keeping us safe. There was no negative intention from him to be grumpy or strict or like joy stealer. He was just looking after us. So I look back and I think, oh gosh, yeah, there were times when it was just like mum and dad don't really let us do a lot out of the house or at parties or with friends or go away or whatever, but it makes perfect sense to me now as a parent and as an adult. But yeah, I remember feeling very frustrated as a teenager at the strictness. But now I can laugh with my parents about that and sort of say, oh, look, sorry, I felt so hard done by, because I really respect it now. And there's ways that they could have done it differently, and sure, they probably could have given us a little bit more wiggle room. But man, you know, like I feel as a parent, all I'm trying to do is keep my kids safe and do the best by them and do the best with what we have and what we know. And so, yeah, it makes perfect sense that that's how they were.
I think our hearts soften a lot once we've had kids, and we think, man,
so
you really do just want to keep them safe and protect them. And I look back on my parents and think, yeah, I get it now.
One of the things that rule in my home growing up is my mum didn't let me wear black till I was 12 because she said it made me look too old. Then she had 3 more daughters, and I'm sure she forgot about that one.
Yeah.
But did your parents have any rules around your wardrobe?
I remember trying to go out of the house once in a skirt that I'd made from some beach towels that I'd sewed together at the side. You know, it was just sort of, I don't even know if it had a zip or anything. It was just literally stitched together and thrown on. Mum was like, you are not going out in there. And I thought that was a great injustice because I'd made it and I looked cool as in it. So no, heaps of rules. And I have them now for Heidi too. Not as many, but you got to throw your weight around somewhere. I do try and remind her that people pay me to tell them what to wear and that she should listen to me because I might know something. But, you know, she could care less.
Love it. How about you, Jenny? What did you learn from your parents about how you should dress?
Well, my family was pretty conservative, so I don't remember there being lots of rules, and I do remember being allowed to make purple hot pants at school. I was allowed to sew them and being kind of surprised that I was given that liberty. But I think that the challenge for me growing up was I was in a big family, so I got lots of hand-me-downs. And they weren't my choice of clothes. So it was kind of, you sort of learnt to just get along with it, and that was what you had. But probably the time I remember most was the tension. I was probably 13 and I wanted to have certain clothes by then. I was just sort of brought into the realm of labels actually mean something. And I remember somebody asking me about my jeans, what jeans was I wearing, and I thought, I don't know, they're just jeans. And my friend had a look at the label and they were called Tough Guys or something. And it was one of those.
That's mortification.
Yeah, it was like, oh, this stuff really matters. And from then on, I was sort of super vigilant about what I was wearing. And I was just so naive, beautifully naive. And it was kind of that hard shock that, people judge you a little bit according to whether you're wearing a label or not. So, yeah.
Oh, and what's fascinating to me is it can start quite young. You know, Beau's 8 and he's obsessed with Santa Cruz now and only wants Santa Cruz clothes. And it started, 6 months ago, and I cannot get him to budge. And I showed up the other day and I'd bought him a Quicksilver t-shirt, I think it was.
Oh my goodness.
And I thought this is pretty cool and pretty similar to Santa Cruz. And he's so sweet, and I showed it to him and he goes, look, Mum, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I don't like it.
Wow.
I was like, what do you mean you don't like it? You're 8 years old. It's a t-shirt and it looks like everything your friends are wearing. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm not going to wear that. I had to take it back.
Wow.
Wouldn't budge.
I can't even think of one label I wore as a kid. I remember breaking my toe, though, and the doctor saying I needed more room, and my mum trying to tell me that nomads were cool. Now, if you don't know what nomads are, you have to Google it, but they're like these pretty much, they look like flippers. Like, there's so much room in them. And she's like, these are cool. They're going to really take off. Yeah. That's my one thing.
I've got this great memory from when I was a child, actually, just speaking about clothing and when you're kids. And I must have been about 6 or 7, and my mum had taken me to this really random shop. It was some kind of bazaar type place, and I had seen this, what I called an ice skating suit in the racks, and it was white with frills at the neck and at the cuff, and it had stitched on big diamante jewels down the front. And I mean, I did no gymnastics or ice skating, but I just thought it was magnificent. I thought it was the most wonderful thing I'd ever seen. And I had no reason to own it. And I said, Mum, isn't this wonderful? And she said, oh, yeah, it's something. And I was like, do you think I could have it? And she must have just seen the joy it brought me. And I mean, you know, she wasn't into buying me extravagant things, and I don't think it was super expensive, but it wasn't cheap. But she bought it for me, and I've never forgotten it. Just I saw on her face, just her going like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, you love this. And it's really stayed with me all these years, and I still own it, and Heidi's worn it, and it's just such a a memory for
Yeah.
me. And so I do try and do that with the kids. If I see them really fall in love with something, even if I think it's tacky or ugly, I've done it, in the past when Heidi's thought something's great and I've just disagreed. I've kind of gone there anyway because that memory has stayed with me. If Mum just been like, all right, you little weirdo, you can wear your ice skating suit. And I wore it to dance class and felt amazing.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love years later in that moment and how it can be such a defining moment, and now it's influencing how you parent.
Yeah.
I think how we dress can be seen, as superficial by some, but the older I get, I have more of appreciation for clothes and how they make me feel, especially after going through pregnancy and becoming a mum. I would think that's what your work is about, maybe more about helping people to feel confident and spark joy rather than necessarily this idea of, staying on trend.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think you've summed it up really well. There are trends that I follow, from season to season, because sometimes that is relevant in certain people's jobs, particularly to stay current and to stay looking relevant, because when we look up to date, people assume that we are up to date in whatever it is that we're speaking about or teaching about or trying to influence others on. So there is sometimes the importance on staying on trend, but that is definitely not the driver behind having a wardrobe that works for you and makes you feel good when you're wearing the clothing. It's actually a huge impact that it makes on your day-to-day life when you're going about feeling like you represent who you are with your clothing and feeling good. I've seen it really take huge effect. I really believe in it. And it does come down to how you feel in the clothing, like comfortable, that it expresses who you are, that you feel seen. I think often as we get to certain stages in life, we can start to feel a bit invisible as we go about our life in our workplace or just when we're out and about. And so to feel seen is really important, and clothing can do that for you too. But yeah, we get really stuck, like when we've had children or we've changed jobs or we've lost a lot of weight or we've been unwell or any big change that can happen physically, we can get really unsettled on suddenly like, oh, my clothes don't fit like they used to, or I can't shop like I used to. I've forgotten how to shop. It's a huge one. Mums particularly, they forget how to shop because we have our children and then we're at home and we're just in our basic day-to-day gear because we're just living, not thriving. We're just getting through the day. And so clothing takes a 5 steps back, and that's totally appropriate, and that's how it should be, no doubt. But soon we are like, oh, I want to go out again into the world and I don't know how to do this. I've got this new body, or my life, I don't go to the office anymore. I just am out with the kids, and how is that meant to look? And so you're relearning, and we should never feel stupid for having to relearn something like that. And I think a lot of people do feel this thing of like, I should know how to do this because I've been dressing myself for 30 years. How come I have forgotten? But the world of fashion and clothing it's the horrors. Like you go to the mall and there's 1,100 shops with 1 million garments in them, and you're meant to know what suits you best, and you're meant to navigate that in a short amount of time that you've got to go shopping, because we never have heaps of time. Who's got all day? Nobody. And so you're just meant to show up and go, this is my best color, and this is really appropriate for me, and I kind of like it enough to wear it, and so you're meant to just do all that. And yeah, it doesn't work like that. There's so much that goes into it. So to navigate all of that takes time and energy, and it's not just this natural instinct that we all have. So I do love helping people. I love re-educating people on how to shop for themselves in a way that makes them really happy to be buying that product. Because we don't have heaps of money to spend on clothing at the moment with the cost of living. So getting those things right is really important. You don't want to be buying stuff that you're not enjoying or not going to wear. So to be able to go in and go, well, this really sparks joy in me, this piece, and I'm going to wear it at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. So the cost per wear is really good. And I'm going to wear it for a couple of years and really enjoy it and make a really intentional purchase, because that also is important for sustainability, right? But it really comes down to when you get those things right, the morning getting dressed is so much easier, and going about your day the way you feel is such a confidence boost, and you just carry yourself differently and you just go about your day better. It's a real thing.
It's a great thing to remember in all our lives, is that we often have to subcontract to somebody else to get some information or skills or ideas, whether that's parenting or clothing or getting your car fixed. It's knowing that we have our limitations and we often need somebody else's eyes to help us. Now, I happened to bump into somebody the other day, Heather, and they were talking about you and your wardrobe workouts.
Oh, yes.
And we were having a little laugh, and she said, well, sometimes you'll hear Heather say, as you pick up a piece of clothing, tell me about this. And we laughed and we thought, yeah, we know what that means, which means you are graciously saying, what the heck are you wearing this for? But your lovely style is to soften it a little bit. So, yeah, how do you go about using that question?
A woman's wardrobe particularly is a very personal space. It's a really vulnerable position they're putting themselves in by inviting me in, and I deeply respect it, and I feel very grateful that they would allow me that place. We are so tied to our look and our clothing and our physical bodies as women. It's not how it should be, but it's kind of undeniable that we feel very much that our clothing and our look and our physical shape is what we're seen as. It's such a big part. So to be invited into that space, I know it's very personal and it's a real privilege. So I do try and make it a really safe space. So when I say something like, tell me about this, it's inviting the story around the garment. You know, like there's always a story with each piece of clothing in there. It's like, oh, I used to wear this when I was 23 before I had the kids, and it's got memories.
I was young and I saw it and it was bedazzled and I said to my mum.
Yeah, exactly. This is my ice skating suit and I love it.
You just never know.
It was really special. Yeah, there's so much emotion attached to our clothing. So yeah, sometimes I'm thinking this is dire, it's got to go, and other times I'm just genuinely curious, like what is the story here? And if it doesn't need to be in our working wardrobe of day to day, it needs to go live in a different part of the house. We only want to see in that lineup in the morning clothes that we can actually wear, not stuff that's just held on to for memory's sake. Yeah.
I recently attended a talk you did, and you broke down people's styles into a few different options. Could you share what some of those categories are with us?
Oh, yeah, sure. So we have kind of our base style personalities. So we have classic, natural, elegant, and those are kind of our foundational styles that we might fit into. And a natural loves to buy clothing based on how it feels, you know, cottons, linens. It's really important how it feels against the body. A natural doesn't really want fiddly clothing. They want stuff that they can just go about their day in, quite practical. And then a classic and an elegant, they're much more into purchasing things that are going to last them a long time. They like things that are going to last a good 5 to 10 years and aren't hugely trend focused, because they don't want it to look like it's from a certain era. An elegant loves things to match. They like their bag to match their shoes, to match their belt. And an elegant is always really into good grooming, so they've got their hairs all in place and their nails done, and yeah, they've got a real presence about them, elegance. And they're so fun to shop with because they love to look coordinated, but they can also get a little bit same in their dressing. It's same with a natural, a classic, and an elegant. They sort of get a bit repetitive, so I need to mess them up a little just to keep them looking relevant. And then we've got our other ones, so we're usually made up of two. We're made up of one of those generally, and then we've got our more creative ones, like really feminine dressing, really creative, really dramatic, or slightly alluring. And so those are mixes of, you know, a romantic, real feminine dresser loves florals, loves a bit of frill, so that comes into their wardrobe a lot. A dramatic loves things that are very on trend, on fashion, so they love to look like they're just up to the minute. And a creative has the biggest wardrobe and the biggest amount of accessories and looks that cover all bases, and they just get dressed each morning on how they feel for the day. And then someone who a bit more alluring loves clothing that shows off their figure, is very feminine but not so much frilly, but just more kind of that classic feminine shape of like dresses and skirts and things that show a real feminine side to them. A little bit sexy maybe, but not overtly, just has that more leaning, loves high heels, that kind of thing. So yeah, usually we're made up of two of those. Yeah.
And then there's men, dad's uniform, pretty much. Is that like? Do you have any tips for dads?
Yeah,
and
it's so unfair for the guys.
Yeah.
It's so limited. You know, it's like, do you want to like just fit in with everyone else? And you either kind of get to buy things that are a little bit repetitive, or you can go right out there and look like the Monopoly man. You know, there's not a lot in between. It's really, really tricky. I think the tips for them is like find out what works and then just repeat it, but update it before it gets looking untidy, and take some advice from your significant other, because they're the ones looking at you and they do care more than the men normally.
I like the dad uniform. I think of my husband, you know, he's quite often in a plain t-shirt, nice jeans and nice shoes. And then just, you know, there's a blazer. And I got in the best sportscraft blazer.
Oh, yeah, I like sports
jacket from an op shop.
Oh,
it was
nice.
so nice. And when he wears it, I'm just like, I feel a little bit proud of myself for some reason. Like, Dayna, you did good. I realised often I would get the kids ready, you know, pack snacks, put out the washing, all these bits and pieces. And then I leave myself to the last minute, and I leave the house with wet hair feeling a bit meh. I'm trying to do better at this. But I think as parents, sometimes we do that in a lot of areas of life, that we leave ourselves to last.
Yeah.
Why do we do that, Jenny?
Yeah, I do think that it often comes from wanting to make sure everyone else's needs are met, because then you can kind of be satisfied and happy that you've done a good job. But it can last too long where you always defer and you find yourself always willing to adjust or accommodate. And I think there is a time when mums particularly need to actually prioritise themselves, which means they'll need to push through a little bit of the pain of the guilt that they'll feel to actually say, no, I am going to spend this time on myself or spend this money on this thing. And I think because often our roles mean that we are accommodating, there is a time to pull back on that.
It's hard though, isn't it? It is. I think it's one of the hardest things to put yourself first as a mum. Yeah,
And
important.
Then we look at the benefits, and I think if you're role modelling, for one thing, you're letting your children also see that mum really takes care of herself, or dad, whoever it is. That's good for them to be viewing as well as they grow.
One of the things I love about this podcast is some of the hard stuff people have gone through, that they share an open conversation up for others through their vulnerability. Now, I know you've done this too over the years, sharing about facing postnatal depression. What did postnatal depression look like for you when in it?
It was such a surprise to me. I felt like this doesn't happen to me. It felt like it came out of the blue. And so when I was in it very early on, it got kind of picked up by my GP, who was an amazing GP obstetrician. So she was the first to bring it up, actually. And fortunately, Michael was a physician too, so he was very aware of some of the signs. But I just kind of remember thinking like, this was so unexpected. And then very quickly became like, okay, well, that's what we're dealing with. Like, let's sort it out. Like, how do we action this to make it better? And so, yeah, it was medication. It was counselling with a really great therapist. And it was my mum coming to stay for many nights in a row so that I could sleep, because sleep deprivation is a huge contributor. And yeah, it was just like, okay, all action stations go. Yeah. And so I'm very fortunate in my experience that it was picked up early and that the team was around. And I think because of that, it was never a hidden thing. I couldn't hide it. it was far too serious a thing to go underground with it. It was like, I have to have dialogue around this. We have to take the team and all the help we can get. And then years later, when I had Beau, and I was doing pretty well, had come off my medication when Heidi was 4 and then got pregnant, and I was like, this is all going to be great. And then halfway through my pregnancy, it just came back and I couldn't manage it without the medication. And we knew the routine. It was like, okay, well, this is what we're going to put in place so that things can run as smooth as possible. But then in the time since, I've had highs and lows with it, and actually it's not just postnatal, but that's a huge trigger for me. But I have generalized anxiety disorder, so I'm still on medication now, and I still have huge things in my life that are placed there to manage the depression, because when the anxiety goes unchecked, the depression kicks in. And so it's still a thing that I manage, and I still manage it with a team. You know, it's not just on me. And that's why I think it's so important to talk about it, because if you don't, then you can't get the team around you.
So good.
We really appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of parents will identify with you and also glean from some of the things that you did to actually help get through it.
Yeah.
I love how you were talking about advice that you quite often are thinking back on Jenny saying, stay in the age.
Yeah.
What's something that you share with your soon-to-be mama friends with advice?
Oh, yeah, probably that again. Just be open to asking for help, or take help where it's offered. Don't be too proud or want to do it all on your own, to be doing everything and handling it all yourself. Take as much help as is offered, and if you're not getting it offered, ask for it.
And I love that you're sharing openly about accessing help, because you often have lots of hurdles in the way, and sometimes it's your pride. Sometimes it's just the way you were raised, that you're self-sufficient and you'll do it on your own and you'll just knuckle down. And I think many of us want that ability to say, look, this is a bit hard. I need some help here. Heather, when your kids are older, my beloved grandchildren are older, and they're about to leave home and they're going to start their own story and their own epic adventures, what do you hope they'll take with them from your parenting and you and Michael?
Oh yeah, that's a big question. I hope that they take our love and dedication to them. They always carry that with them, because I hope that they always want to still come back and be part of our lives and talk to us and connect with us. I definitely want them to go off and be their own people, but my first hope would be just that we stay in great connection, and that they know they're loved and that they know their worth. Probably that would be another big one, is that they know their self-worth going through their young adult lives and going into whatever they choose to do, where they choose to travel in their careers. Especially, that's probably forefront of my mind with Heidi at the age she's at now, is that whatever she's taught, she makes decisions for herself based on her self-worth and not what people decide she's worthy of. So I hope, as young people, that's what they go off knowing. That,
Amazing.
How about you as Nana?
Oh, ditto to all of that. I particularly love the connection that you want your kids to have, that they will want to return home. And that, I think that sort of closes the circle, because you're giving kids agency to go out into the world and to do their own thing and be their own persons, but you also really would love it if they circle back.
Yes. Yeah.
Come back home. And I think that's a job well done, when your kids still enjoy your company and they want to be with you and part of your family. And I think that's a very noble and achievable goal. And that kids should know it. We should tell them that we really want them to come back. Maybe not to stay. Yeah. Heather's been wonderful at finding houses where we can both live. But it's that real sense of this is family, and I like spending time with my folks.
I hope they just want to come round for lots of family dinners and be together. Sometimes I wonder about Bo and Heidi because they're 5 years apart, and boy and girl, and so at the moment it's like having a crazy cat and a crazy dog that hate living together sometimes. Like they're just at each other. It's probably our biggest struggle right now, is that they just love to poke the bear and annoy each other. And that's totally normal. That's not weird. That's right. That's ordinary. But I'm like, oh, at what age will you guys enjoy each other's company? And when will we all sit around at the dinner table and have lots of laughs and you guys will like each other?
It'll come. I think it'll come.
Watch this space.
Yeah.
There was a lot of gold in that chat, but one thing that's really been sticking with me is this thing of not having to have all the answers. When it comes to social media and technology and it's changing and what is my child ready for and what do I want to keep them away from? The fact that we don't have to have all the answers, that we can have a conversation that keeps going, that we keep reassessing, and we're the parent and this is sitting with us and we'll come back to you.
Yeah. We often feel like we've got to have everything decided and sorted. So it's a lovely relief, I think, when parents know, actually my job is to take one thing at a time and we'll have conversations about it and the parents will take the lead on it, but we'll get information. So buying some time is really good and saying, honey, I haven't given this enough thought yet, but it's something that's really important to us, so we will be discussing it. And then, pushing it out a little bit and not being fully sort of caught in, well, what is everybody else doing? Because that's not always your lead. Sometimes you are getting ideas from what other parents are doing, but sometimes nobody knows what to do, especially in this technology field. So going slower and more carefully and being considered and letting your kids know that an answer is coming, and even the answer that's coming may change over time. And I think we are just walking carefully through the technology stuff because no one's been this way before. And so if we were to find that we'd given too much, which many parents are finding, there's nothing wrong with having a reset and actually coming back to a little bit less. And so let your kids know that it is a little bit fluid, and also write stuff down, because sometimes kids will take the idea around technology and think, right, I've got it and I'm only going to get more now, and it can get out of control. So I think if we write down this is the contract, this is where we're at now, and we'll review it in 3 months' time.
Actually, that's a lovely resource that we do have on our website, the contract for a phone and technology and having access to the internet. I actually love that because we've had to do that in our family where our boy, we let him play a PlayStation game and it's a cartoon thing, and we thought, we'd done a bit of research, but for him it sparked a bit of a bad dream. And we talked about it and we realised, hey, we're not going to play this now. We're going to put this back away, and in a couple of years, or a year, we'll reassess it. And he's been on board with that, but I'm sure it doesn't always go smoothly. And so we're now realising it's easier to go slowly, so we don't have to then, go, all right, we're not doing that now. But it does happen. And like you say, sometimes you do have to rein it in and go, we got that wrong, yeah. But we'll come back to it.
That's awesome. And reining it in is hard to do, because whenever we've had a freedom, we resist having that freedom taken off us. So I let parents know, look, it'll be hard and there'll be a fuss, but children will settle down again. So you kind of just weather the storm and then settle down into what the new contract is or what you've decided for your child.
Yeah, and we've even said, hey, sorry, buddy, I know it's disappointing, totally get that, but, we've made a call and we actually don't think it was the right one. So I know that he can kind of appreciate that bigger picture. Right. I really value, and I just think it's amazing how open and honest people are with us. It's a real... I don't know, it's a sacred place, I think, these podcasts can be, where people open up about some really hard stuff. And when you talk about hard stuff, it's just so good because it creates a conversation for other people going through similar things. And I really appreciated how Heather talked about her journey with postnatal depression. And I love this idea too of this plan, and it like kicked into gear and everyone rallied. And then when she faced postnatal depression again with number 2, it wasn't like this, oh, I can't believe we're going through this again, getting stuck or feeling shame. It was like, no, okay, this is happening again. We've had a plan. Let's activate it again.
I love that too, because I think she backed herself, and I often think we hover over decisions for too long and we blame ourselves and we shame ourselves. But Heather was she was front-footed self-care, and she had her team in place, and she knew what it was, and she was prepared to action something that would benefit everyone in the family. And it didn't come at a agonising, torturous kind of a way. It was fairly prompt, and that tells me that she was really, assertive, backing herself, and ready to do what needed to be done.
That's something I hope that everyone takes from this chat, is that we go away and we look at our lives and we go, where can we give ourselves a bit more care? Where am I putting myself far down the list where I actually should be at the top? And so for me, like I mentioned, it's going to be drying my hair before I leave the house and not, whacking on some lipstick as I'm going out the door. If I need it that day, if I'm feeling a bit meh, I'm actually going to put myself together and give myself some care and time. And then, I will pack the school lunches and we'll get going. But I just feel like actually I need to put myself a little bit higher in that list. And I hope that people look at their own lives and maybe where they should be giving themselves a little bit more care and time.
That dignity to self is what really makes a difference in our parenting. If you've said, you're worth it, Jenny, you're worth doing this, you actually operate differently when you have spoken or done something that says, yeah, I'm worth this. This is important to me. I'll slow down and make sure I've got time to put my lipstick on.
Which is funny because I don't wear lipstick. But we get the idea. Well, that wraps up another episode of Parents We've Met. As always, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast project of ours. We are loving putting it together for you. Now, we are all about supporting parents on their parenting journey. So if you'd like access to more resources, head over to our website, parentingplace.nz. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook. And if you're enjoying what we're doing here, we'd love if you could share it on social media or rate and review it on this app.
Rover. Music, radio, podcasts.